Hey everybody, it's Ziz here, and I wanted to make this video to give you my thoughts and opinions on the three big MMOs that are coming out this year in 2014. That's the Elder Scrolls Online, which came out about a month ago, WildStar comes out in a couple of weeks, and ArcheAge, which will be out in a few months. Now, first thing I want to say, I'm not an expert and I don't know everything about these games. I got to play the Elder Scrolls Online in beta for about a year, and I've played it since launch. I've got a character to level 30 in ArcheAge, and some other lower level characters in WildStar. I only played for a few days over the weekend, and I got a character to level 17. So as you can see, I have varying degrees of experience between these games. Number two, I am not trying to convince you one game is better or worse than the other. I'm not trying to convince you to play one game or not play together. I honestly could care less what you play. I hope you're having fun, but other than that, I don't really care. My goal with this video is to simply give you a good comparison between the three, to show their strengths and their weaknesses and compare them between each other. So if you're looking for a game to play, this will hopefully give you some ideas of what they do well and not so well. Alright, now, first let's start with the Elder Scrolls Online. Most notably, number one positive about the game is it's an Elder Scrolls game. So everybody who's gotten to play Elder Scrolls games in the past, it's really fun to be able to go back and see places you visited before. You get to see Myaki Lyre and Daggerfall and all the different places you've been before, which is really nice and really fun to explore it and see places that you've been before. Another positive about the game is its solo questing experience. It does a really great job. There's really good storylines, and quests are spread out all over the world, and they're really interesting and they're fun. I remember one particular quest where you get thrown in jail, and then a little bit later on you get thrown in jail again, and it's the same main character that gets you out of jail both times, and he says something to the effect of like, this is the second time that I've gotten you out of jail. And it's really funny and it's memorable, and so it's fun and it's good questing. And another thing that is really great that Elder Scrolls Online does is it has some really big, large, massive, huge scale PvP battles. You can literally have hundreds of people on screen sieging a castle, breaking down the walls, knocking the door open with trebuchets and rams and people firing spells, and you still have pretty good performance through this whole thing. So that's another really great positive. Now, on the downside, a few negatives about the game. One is combat responsiveness and just responsiveness in general in the game. Now, what does that mean? That means when you click a button to open a door or loot a monster or activate a skill while you're fighting, sometimes, a lot of times, it may not work. You might have to press the button over and over again, which can get really frustrating because in an active combat game, you're trying to block and dodge and attack all really quickly, really fast, and when buttons don't work and skills don't work the way they're supposed to, that can be really frustrating. Another thing that hasn't worked out super great are all the bugs. Now, it's a new game, I understand there's bugs, but there have been some bugs for some people that have literally stopped them in their progression, and they couldn't play the game anymore because it literally stopped them. Now, some of these bugs they fixed, and they're getting better, but that's another problem that's happened. And lastly, I'll just say that grouping has been a problem as well. Solo, it's been great, but when you try to group with players, it's been difficult. You'll be grouped with a player and you won't even see them even though you're in the same area. You have to log out and back in or travel to player. Some quests don't even let you do as a group. You have to do completely solo. So the grouping experience has not been easy for a lot of people. Now, on the bright side, they're coming out with new patches all the time that are fixing things. They are aware of the fact that weapon swapping in combat is terrible and they're trying to fix it. They're aware that phasing issues are not good and they're trying to fix it. They're aware that there's a lot of solo stuff and not a lot of group content, so they're adding a whole zone called Craglorn to try to fix that because it's all grouping and 4-man groups and 12-man groups. But that's not out yet, and the fixes haven't happened, so I can't say how good it is. So to recap, it's a really great game if you love Elder Scrolls and you want to experience that world again, if you want to do solo questing, or if you want to have massive PvP battles, it's really great for that sort of stuff. Number two, WildStar. Now, like I said, I only got to play a couple of days of WildStar. I only got to level 17, but some of the great things about WildStar, which I didn't even get to experience, are endgame raids. Now, These are big 20 and 40 man raids, which are going to be huge and massive and have progression. And a lot of people love that. That's something that's been missing from some new games that have come out, and that's something that people miss from old World of Warcraft, and so that is one of the great big selling points of the game. I think for a lot of people is going to be these great dungeons and great raids. On top of that, they also have instance PvP. They got scenarios, they got arenas, they have 40 on 40 war plots, so those are some things too that people have been missing in recent games that they really enjoy. Another positive for WildStar is the combat responsiveness, and this is a huge one for me. And an example of that is recently the beta weekend just ended, and there was an end of the beta, event, and everybody got in the capital city, and there was hundreds of people on screen. There's no way you could count them. Honestly, being conservative, I would say on my screen there was at least 300 or 400 people. It could have been 500, 600, 700 people, but I would say conservatively 300 or 400. And on top of all those people, the developers for the game, they were spawning these giant monsters, just these huge, massive, like, raid bosses, right? And so not only are there a lot of people on screen, but they're also fighting it out, right? So you got all these spell effects. It looks like a crazy disco going on, just nuts. Now, because of all that stuff going on, I was really low on my frame rate. I was between like probably 5 and 10. So that means it was kind of stuttery and stuff. The frame rate wasn't super smooth. However, I was still able to press buttons and they would activate instantly. Because I was a low level, I would have got one shot by these giant mobs, right? So when I saw an AoE, I had to jump out of the way or dodge or sprint really quickly. And during that whole time, not a single time would I press a button and it wouldn't happen, or there would be input or skill lag and things like that. So I would dodge out of the way, and a bunch of other people would die right in front of me, and I didn't die. So the combat responsiveness is really great. And not just the responsiveness, but combat in general is really fun. Now, what makes it fun, you could say? Fun, I guess, is a relative term, but for me, there's two parts that make combat fun. One is the telegraph system. Now, the telegraph system is simply, it puts on the ground and it shows you the AoE. Everything is like conal AoEs or an arc or a long path of AoEs. Now, this does a couple of things. One, it forces you to hit your target with the AoE. Your target has to be in it to hit them, right? Which can be difficult when you have a long AoE or something and they're moving or dodging or sprinting out of the way. So it takes a little bit more skill. It's more interactive, so you got to worry about your positioning. And number two, when you see those red circles on the ground that are expanding and about to blow up, it makes it more exciting and more interesting for you as well. Trying to dodge out of the way and sprint away, it's like, oh no, I gotta get out of the way, the thing's gonna blow up. Now sure, other games have mechanics like that. There might be AoEs, but usually stuff is just happening, and like you kind of know, oh, there's damage, and oh, there's AoE, and there's stuff happening, but you don't recognize it and you don't see it as clearly as you do in WildStar, so you miss out on that feeling like, oh no, that big thing's about to happen, jump out of the way. It's really prevalent and it really happens in WildStar a lot. So the combat's fun because you're moving around for your skills and you're trying to get away from all these other skills. Lastly, another positive for the game is it's got a lot of character. Whether you think it's funny or not, at least it's memorable and it's got a lot of fun character. The first time you level up and it says, "Oh, you leveled up! Way to go, Cupcake!" Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Oh snap, that was awesome. Whether you think it's funny or not, at least it's memorable. These characters have character. There's, it feels like something that's memorable. It doesn't just go along and I can't even remember that. So those are a couple really good positives about the game. Now, some negatives about the game that you'll see around the internet. First one that pops up all the time is it's a cartoony WoW clone, right? That was me. I never paid attention to this game until a few weeks ago when the beta came out. Why? Because I didn't like the graphics, I didn't care if it was cartoony, I didn't want to play that, and I didn't want to play a WoW clone. I've played WoW, why do I want to play a WoW clone? So that's the first thing. And that's subjective, alright? Because I'm trying to stay unbiased. That is completely subjective. If you don't like it, that's completely up to you. Like I said, I wasn't turned on by the graphics either. And saying it's a WoW clone, if you're not interested, if you didn't have fun playing WoW, then you absolutely probably are not going to have fun playing WildStar as well. Okay. Another downside of the game would be bugs. Now, it's a new game. It hasn't come out yet, but in the few days I played over the weekend, I got a whole bunch of UI errors popping up all the time. I had nameplates that were completely disappearing, so it's really hard to PvP when you have no idea if they're a friend or a foe, right? And other bugs like the sound just cutting out completely. And like I got a crazy like death screech in my ear that almost killed me and everybody who was watching. So bugs like that. And then also I had a lot of problems. Last thing negative that I can remember is that I had a lot of problem finding quests. Like if a quest was down in a cave or something like that, I couldn't really find it. I had some troubles finding stuff, which is weird because if you click on the quest, it gives you an arrow where to go, but I still had problems finding stuff. And I know some other people didn't really like the early questing experience as well. You'll see some people, reviewers, saying that. So those are some things that may not be great. So to recap, I think it's got a lot of character in the game. It's really fun and memorable. It's got great action combat, which is responsive and fun to play. And it's got great endgame progression, PvE, giant raids, and it also has PvP with arenas and battlegrounds and rated battlegrounds and rated arenas, as well as open server PvP and 40 vs 40. Okay? Now, last game, ArcheAge, number 3. Again, like I said, I got up to about level 30, so I got to do a little bit of all the game, but really I didn't get to do the best part of this game either, which is considered the end game sandbox stuff. Now, if you don't know much about ArcheAge, it's been out for about 1.5 years in Korea and then China, and it went to Russia, and now it's coming to North America and Europe. And the early part of the game and the end part of the game are completely different. The first part of the game, all you're doing pretty much is some questing to try to level up. But once you get to endgame, it's really sandboxy. It's not a full-on sandbox like Minecraft, but it's really sandboxy. Now, what does that mean? Well, let's say I want to build a house. In some games, there's no housing at all. And even games that do have housing, it's like you buy the house, you click a button, and there's your house. Or worst case scenario, maybe you got to spend some money or maybe have a couple little resources. In ArcheAge, it's a lot more in depth than that. You want to build a house, you got to get the blueprint. How do you get the blueprint? You got to get, you know, these things called WildStars, and you whole process for all that. But let's say you got the blueprint, you're going to make your house. You got to get lumber. How do you get lumber? You got to get trees. How do you get trees? You got to plant trees. Well, which trees? You got to get a farm. You got to plant your trees, and then you got to let them grow, and then you got to cut them down. You got to plant more trees. You got to go find trees. And then after you get the trees, you get the lumber. You got to treat the lumber, and you got to make it into logs, and that's just the logs. And you got to get the stone, and you got to mine. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch involved into making your house. And you can make a house, and you can have a farm, and you can plant crops, and you can have chickens and cows, and you can slaughter them, and you can get meat, and you can all this stuff. A super, super in-depth sandboxy sort of crafting system. You can build boats, and you can have boat combat. So this really open feeling, open world, I'm not stuck on rails, I get to just do what I want, is a really, really big selling point and something that a lot of people love with ArcheAge. Okay? Another great thing about that is it has a really in-depth crafting and economy system, because the best gear, pretty much the only gear you're going to use from level 20 on, is going to be crafted gear. So that means all the stuff that you got while you were mining, all the lumber that you were planting, all the sheep that you were killing, that stuff is really valuable, and there's a really, really great, meaningful economy. That gold and that money you get really means something, which is really fun in MMO to have a great economy system. That means crafters are really going to be worthwhile. That means the guilds that come together are really going to have a good purpose and goal of building houses and building castles together. Another really great feature is the open world and PvP system, and on top of that, naval battles. You can build boats, and you can go out and you can sail your boats, and you can take your resources to sell them, but while you're doing that, people can attack you or you can attack them. So it really gives you this open, meaningful economy PvP system where you're building stuff and having it. Really, it's a lot of fun. Some negative things about the game. One, the early questing is probably the worst questing you're going to find. It's completely boring, uninteresting, literally go click, go get 10 things, come back, go kill 10 things, come back, over and over and over and over and over again. Which I understand that's not the point of the game. They're just trying to level you up, but just be aware, it's really, really terrible, really, really boring, and it's probably the worst part of the game, okay? Number 2 is the combat. Now, I will say the combat, it looks fun, like it's fluid, good animations, and it's responsive. You press a button and it happens right away. The problem is it's boring because it's an old tab target cooldown click a button system. So after you've done it for an hour and 5 hours and 10 hours, you are literally just brain dead, just clicking the buttons on your rotation. You don't need to really pay attention. There's not much you have to do. Sure, you could interrupt a cast once in a while, but basically you just really just boring combat system. Now, combat can still be fun if you're killing someone and taking their stuff, but the combat system itself is really very boring. And lastly, I think that the PvP, while it can be fun, is kind of sporadic. When you get to level 30, you get to go to like an open PvP zone where your side fights the other side. But that's only if the other side is there questing, or you are in their side questing, or you find somebody. What if they're hiding? What if it's at off-peak hours? So while the PvP can be fun, it can also be very sporadic, which in other games, like Elder Scrolls Online, you can go to Cyrodiil, and that's where the PvP action is at. You know you're going to find some action. In WildStar, you can queue for a battleground, and you're going to get PvP action right away. In ArcheAge, you might have to run around, and you might go 20 minutes, and you might never find anybody. Or you might spawn and go right over here, and somebody kills you right away and ganks you. It's really unpredictable, which can be fun, but also frustrating. So in general, ArcheAge, if you love sandboxes, if you want to build your house and build a boat and harvest all your crops, then that's a great game you want to look forward to. Now, how do they all compare to each other? I would simply say this. If you want to explore the Elder Scrolls world, if you want a solo quest, that is a great game. If you want to be in a group and do PvE raids, if you want to have a really fun dynamic combat system, or you want raided battlegrounds, then you want to play WildStar. And if you want to do have a sandboxy, open freedom, I want to plant crops and raise goats, and I want to kill people and steal their packs in this open, free-for-all kind of world where it's a sandbox, then ArcheAge is your game. And like I said at the beginning, I don't care what you play. I hope you have fun and you enjoy it. And as you can see, all 3 games are really, really different, which is great. I hope all games do great, and it's wonderful that we have all these options between 3 games that are completely different. And I really do think they're completely different. Sure, they're MMOs, but they feel completely different. So, that's my opinion. Those are my ideas on the 3 different games, how they relate to each other, what the good and what the bad is. Tell me what you think down below in the comments. Send me a message. Ziz, you're completely wrong. You're stupid. Your beard looks ugly. Whatever you want. I'm perfectly fine with it. But I just wanted to share my ideas and my opinions between the 3 games and what I thought. I hope you have fun. I'll see you out there. Alright, let's do this video. This is cat hair. Take number 9. Alright, here we go. In your face!